Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stoliarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings and welcome to our Virtual Enlightenment Salon, streaming on Sunday, February 12th, 2023. Today, we have a fascinating discussion in store for you about the history of the life extension movement, going back as far as the early 1960s. And indeed, a lot of this history has not really been extensively discussed anywhere else. And while it has been memorialized in various publications, we don't see a whole lot of commentary devoted to it online today. And we want to change that as the U.S. Transhumanist Party because we are trying to understand the history of our movement, how it has developed over time, and what we can learn from that, and how we can extrapolate the achievements of prior decades into our future so that we hopefully can reach indefinite longevity in all of our lifetimes. So joining us today, we have two of our U.S. Transhumanist Party officers, as well as myself, Gennady Stoliarov II, the chair of the Transhumanist Party. We have Ben Ballweg, our director of longevity outreach, and we have Art Ramon Garcia, our director of visual art. And our special guest today is Carlyle. Carl has been a pro-longevity activist, indeed an immortalist, for now over 6 decades. So that is remarkable in and of itself. I think among all of the guests whom we have invited to our virtual enlightenment salons, Carl has had the greatest longevity in the life extension movement. And now I am going to turn the floor over to Carl, but before I ask him to provide his introductory remarks, I am going to show you Carl. This is what Carl looks like. And as you can see, Carl has found the secret to indefinite longevity because this is what he looks like after more than 6 decades of longevity activism. But Carl, welcome. And could you please tell us a bit about your story and what this picture represents, as well as the chronology of your involvement with life extension activism?
Thank you very much. So to begin with, my involvement in the movement began in the early 60s from a personal experiences with mortality, because as a kid, I never had grandparents. They all passed away before I was born. And the other was that my mother's name was Vita. My father was from the Span family. So it occurred to me that her real name was Lifespan, because Vita means life. So I was born Carlyle Span, and I preferred identifying with the Carlyle family. But as time went on, in the early 60s, there were movements like the civil rights movement and the early women's movement and the early gay movement. And they were all pronouncing their opposition to the things that they felt were oppressing them. So the thing that occurred to me is that mortality is something that's oppressing all of us, and that we should have some chance to have the choice how long we are going to extend our lives. And along came the science talking about cryonics, freezing those who are dead. I call it cryonic embalming of the dead who want to live again. So they'll simply just take their heads off and freeze them. And one of the very tragic was a young girl who was the daughter of Robert Anton Wilson, a very famous writer. And she was an immortalist, a little immortalist beauty. and she was murdered. So her dad put her into cryonic suspension. So as we went along, my interest became interested in the politics of immortalism and transhumanism, and also the cultural aspects of transhumanism. Now, you've written a wonderful children's book called Death is Wrong. And good, I'm glad to see it. And the thing is, this is where it starts. It all starts at the beginning of a childhood, where we begin to learn that we're mortal. And mortal consciousness is deeply embedded in the consciousness of the young and the old. And transhumanism and immortalism have come along to rearrange that habit, that mental habit of saying we're going to die. And it's going to change everything, including the language, so that transhumanist language is going to change the world. When you say, no, I'm not going to die, I'm going to work hard for life extension so we can all choose how long we live. And that is the basic democratic basis of the movement, is why we must have a choice. And science can back us up to make that choice. For example, if someone says, I want to live 100 years, fine, science is working to make that happen. If someone wants to live 1,000 years, fine, science can make that happen. Because the longer you live, the more you evolve to a higher level. So when I used to talk to people in the street, I would always do some kind of question to see how they would respond to the idea of life extension. 90% of it was based on mortal thinking, except one wonderful young woman. When I asked her, I said, would you like to live forever? She said, yeah, if not forever, at least half of forever. So I knew there was a minority of young people and older people who would respond very positively to a cultural movement that transhumanism is becoming. And we need to basically emphasize in a linguistic form what the difference would be when talking about mortality and aging. So the thing is that transhumanism is going in the two directions that I went in. I went into the political aspect of it by getting Mayor Bradley signing the anti-aging petition and asking other mayors to do so. And I also got young people involved with my rock and roll band, where I was named Johnny Forever, and got them singing songs and getting ready to march. And the basic idea of marching would be to march to laboratories where they're doing the scientific research. And Bob Wilson and about 100 of us marched to one place in Berkeley where they were doing anti-aging research. And we praised them and said, thank you, thank you. We want to be able to control how long we live, and you're making that possible. Well, there are several different areas in the United States and in the world where that kind of research is taking place. And they can all enjoy a wonderful march of hundreds or thousands of people carrying picket signs saying, let's keep our life alive. Okay? So the thing is, I moved from my youth into my middle age, started writing books like Kennedy's book, Death is Wrong, to my science fiction trilogy called The Cosmic Mutant. Because behind our earthly desire to live long and have control over how long we live, there's a whole cosmic background that's going to be involved. For example, longevity has a possibility of allowing us to transplant mechanisms into our brain to begin to learn incredible amount of information. So if you're going to live 1,000 years, you're going to be a genius, because you're going to know everything about life on Earth, and you're going to know about the cosmos as science progresses. So when I used to ask people, would you like to extend your life for a few hundred years? No, they said, you're selfish. You're selfish to want to do that, because you can live forever after you die, if you can go to heaven, or you can be reborn in another body. Well, this is mortal thinking that basically in a mortal body is immortal as thinking. So we have immortal minds in our mortal body, but science is just working now to make that possible for the body to be immortal, so that the immortal mind will have an immortal body. But if others want to continue thinking in the mortalist direction, that they can go to heaven when they die, God bless them. We're just asking them, could you help us or listen to our plea that we should have the right to control how long we live, even if it's forever? And we would hope to get a positive response for those who want to go to heaven when they die, or those who want to be reborn in another body when they die. So that's the beginning of the politics that I see for immortalism. And transhumanism is doing a wonderful job beginning to bring this message to the world. And also get politicians involved, as Mayor Bradley did. He got mayors involved. We had some immortalist friends called the Everyone family that used to fly over Sacramento asking them to consider anti-aging laws and life extension laws. So the whole thing is we are on the verge of transhumanism transforming mortal society into where we can at least enjoy having an immortal mind in an immortal body. And I will continue working with the transhumanists in every way to keep that going.
Yes, thank you very much, Carl, for that overview. And now I would like to delve into some of the specifics so that we can learn a bit more about some of the endeavors in which you were involved. The first endeavor that I would like to speak to you about would be SLAM, the Student League for the Abolition of Mortality. And I'm going to share an article about SLAM that you provided here called Anti-Death Club Finds Their Own. This one is from April 11th, 1961. This article is from Los Angeles, California, and it says the Student League for the Abolition of Mortality, SLAM, a new campus organization here, held its organization meeting this week. And meanwhile, UCLA SLAM's sister chapter at Antioch has a grave problem. It can't receive official status. It has had one meeting in which it chose its officers and organized 6 subcommittees, but adjourned before it drafted a statement of its purpose. And there is actually another article about this. It is rather remarkable because it features Ted Goertzel, who is the father of Ben Goertzel. And I do have that article as well. That article was actually shared by Ben Goertzel on Twitter a few months ago. So I have it right here. That article was even earlier, February 17th, 1961. And it speaks about the bind in which this SLAM chapter found itself, because during its first meeting, it did not get to drafting a statement of its purposes, but it had to have that statement according to the bylaws of the college in order to be able to meet again. But it's interesting that Ted Goertzel here was elected one of the co-chairmen upon his own recommendation, and he suggested that some of the SLAM activities would include sending congratulatory letters to scientists and theologians working on the immortality problem. And he cited some statistics that 200 years ago, the annual death rate in England was 35 per 1,000. And at that point in 1961, it was 12 per 1,000. And he said if the trend continues, the human mortality rate can be brought down to 0. So these are some quite forward-thinking ideas, especially considering that 1961 was now 62 years ago. And my father was 1 month old when this particular article was published. So that should give us some perspective about the longevity of the longevity movement. Of course, there were some earlier precursors to that movement that we can also discuss, such as the Russian cosmists, for example. But in the United States, this seems to be one of the first incarnations of the longevity movement. So now that I've given a brief preview of SLAM, Carl, I would like you to speak more to the history of this organization, what motivated its founding, and how you became involved with it, and what ultimately became of it, because we see these articles, but we would like to know a bit more about what happened with it later, and how did it develop? Did it persist? And if not, why did it not persist? We're just very curious to learn more.
Well, SLAM didn't continue on and on as it should have because of the opposition, but those who were involved with it, like myself, continued to take the idea and make it a public idea. And it still needs to be made a mass public idea. So the thing was, after SLAM, I basically began organizing groups that would talk about it. I even organized a group called Mortals Anonymous, based on the idea of Alcoholics Anonymous, because one of the problems was that when I'm asking average person in the street, would you like to extend your life maybe 100, 200 years? The majority were negative. So we did Mortals Anonymous for about a month or two and got people involved using a different kind of language. For example, transhumanist linguistics would basically lead their people to talk about the extension of their life. And one of the main things that we presented was that longevity isn't a selfish thing. Saving the earth is basically one of the major principles of a long-lived human population, because mortality has caused things like Putin invading the Ukraine and killing thousands of people. It also led to the death of hundreds of thousands in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because mortals are fighting mortals in order to believe in their own immortality. It's been said that dictators believe they're immortal, and killing millions of people of their enemies, that satisfies their desire to be remembered after they die. Well, that's too bad. That kind of mortal thinking will end when a large number of people begin to support scientific research, so that we begin thinking in immortalist terms instead of mortalist terms. The longevity movement can protect the earth better than any mortal population, because long-lived people want to save the planet they live on. So longevity is one of the first steps to saving the earth. It's not about being selfish. It's about saving the earth because there'll be immortal people living on it for centuries. And secondly, the other idea is to use longevity to save life in the universe. One of the things in my novel, which is an instruction manual, it's about trying to teach people what would it be like to live forever, is that going into the universe, there out of billions and billions of planets in our universe, there have to be civilizations that are evolving. Well, if somebody can have come and helped us become immortal 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, there wouldn't have been World War I and World War II, because longevity would have made that completely unnecessary. So that our task as long-lived beings is to go out into the universe and help other civilizations or primitive species to evolve to a higher level. And in that way, we become cosmic angels, you might say, that we have to help them evolve to a higher level. And the interesting thing is, to me, as time has evolved, that both religion and science, who are normally opposed to each other, are really undocumented twins, because religion and science, underneath it all, are based on the motivation to survive. They're both survival strategies. So when you talk to religious people about them dying and going to heaven, that's their survival strategy. God bless them. Or if you talk to somebody from Asia, oh, I am going to live in new bodies every time I die. That, hey, God bless you. That's your way to do it. But can you support us? And, because we support your survival strategy of reincarnation and going to heaven, can you support us to scientifically become long lived? And through the years, we've learned many, many things about that. That cosmism existed about 120, 25, 30 years ago in Russia. And they were basically saying that we should not only become long lived eternal youth, but we should go into the cosmos. And that basically is the basic idea based on religion. You become immortal and you go to heaven. Well, scientific immortals would go into the cosmos to help other species survive. And the thing is that Timothy Leary, who was a very, very popular in the 60s with his idea of taking psychedelic drugs to become enlightened, later in life became an immortalist. He began to take the cosmist idea and put it into the minds of many of his followers, that we could not only become immortal, but we go into the cosmos to save lives. And the idea has progressed further and further and further to the point where some billionaires among us, like Jeff Bezos and the others, are supporting scientific research for this exact same longevity purpose. And this is where the marchers would march and go say thank you. In fact, as I said, we had a march like that in Berkeley. About 100 of us went to one of the scientific research centers where they were doing longevity research to say thank you. And so there is a cosmic concept embedded in the idea of transhumanism and immortalism, but changing our culture is the next step. So now there are immortalist books, transhumanist books, like Death is Wrong by Kennedy. I did my share with my trilogy, The Cosmic Mutant. And they're also, in my many 60 years of trying to get my message out, I wrote musicals. And one of them was about the baby boomers becoming immortal. And one was about a little bald girl. I began finding out that there are little children that are bald. They lose their hair. It's called alopecia. So in one of my musicals, it was an alternative to the musical Hair, which was very popular in the 60s and 70s. And I called it Bald. So the little girl begins to love her being bald because all the aliens from outer space that they show us are all bald. So she asks her father to build a spaceship so she can go out into the cosmos as a little bald immortal. So I've written musicals. Also, I had marching songs written, and there are many, many aspects of the culture that other people are going to join in, writing books, musicals, plays, TV shows, and so on and so forth, to bring the message out in a much pleasant and wonderful way to the mass of the public. So we hope, but within 20 years, there will be some medicine pills that you can take to rejuvenate the cells of your body, and also be able to listen to musicals, read books about the same subject of living forever and going into the cosmos and saving our planet, first of all.
Yes, thank you very much, Carl. And the next subject we're going to delve into is the politics of longevity, because one fascinating aspect that not a lot of people are aware of is that in 1962, Hubert Humphrey delivered a speech to Congress calling for, in his words, the conquest of death. And you can see here a transcript of Hubert Humphrey's testimony to Congress dated October 13th, 1962. So, Carl, would you like to elaborate a bit on the context behind this testimony? What led Hubert Humphrey to make these bold and ambitious statements. So, for example, Hubert Humphrey was using the posited threat of the Soviet Union's competition with the United States as a way to motivate additional research. And he says that he wants to state that it is one of the most important of all phases of medical research. Why? Because it concerns the most universal interest of man, namely the prolongation of human life, the postponement of death, and yes, perhaps the greatest scientific frontier, the reversibility of death. Mm-hmm. And then he said, in my judgment on this supreme scientific issue, federal agencies have unfortunately proceeded to date in a relatively unimaginative, uncoordinated, unplanned, and haphazard manner. I think perhaps we could make the same characterization today. But he also noted that there was progress happening during his time, and he stated, I urge that the United States compete with the USSR in bold research toward at least partial conquest of death. But he used the words conquest of death. And this is remarkable because if a politician were to do that today, especially a politician of the prominence of Hubert Humphrey, he was one of the leading Democratic Party senators, and he later became the vice president of Lyndon Johnson. Unfortunately, he died of cancer, so he did not live long enough to see many of the advances that he was describing, but his mindset was definitely in the right place. So, Carl, tell us more about this history, about how Hubert Humphrey came to see the value of life extension research enough to be able to publicly advocate for it before Congress.
Well, Humphrey became aware of the Russian idea of cosmism. Unfortunately, cosmism didn't take over the mentality of Russia, but it was very embedded in many of the minds of the thinking people in Russia in the late 19th century. But actually, it's been involved in the minds of people for centuries, such as the followers of Jesus Christ. Christians don't normally say God is an immortal and Jesus is an immortal, but that's what they treat them like. And for example, I used to tell people, listen, God doesn't need life insurance because he lives forever. And so I kind of emphasize that point to Christians, that you're actually immortalists. So the thing is that Humphrey picked up on the idea that Russian scientists were working on elongating life. That was fascinating to me at that time when I learned about it. So that was a major motivation to me to try to raise consciousness in America and make it an American point of view. Well, it should be a world point of view, not limited to one country. But Humphrey started this idea of cosmism. And like I said before, Timothy Leary picked up on it in the 70s and 80s that we should reverse death. Well, reversibility of death was an amazing thing to say back in 1962. And we need to keep talking about it. Like I said, it's all part of immortalist linguistics, transhumanist linguistics, to begin to help people learn this new way of talking and thinking. So the thing is that the advance of science in this regard is going on and on and on, both in Europe and in America. And as a matter of fact, there is a young gentleman named Sergey Young, who says he has a lot of money to put into it. Well, so does Jeff Bezos and the other billionaires who are working on it as well. But the real gap is that public consciousness is unaware in a mass level that this is happening. And transhumanists and immortalists have the wonderful task of making things like Humphrey's reversibility of death statement conscious in a terms of mass consciousness. Do you know what I mean? And that is what the next stage of the movement is, not only the research, but friendly marches to where the research is being done to thank them. Because the people who march to a scientific laboratory would just say, we want to have control over our lives. That's part of our right in a democracy. And it's true. In the beginning of the American Revolution, we were told we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, the pursuit of happiness for many, many, many millions of people is to continue their life, to help the world, and to go into the universe and do some wonderful, wonderful work. So Hubert Humphrey was unfortunately mortal and had to suffer his mortality. I wish we could go back in time and give his body a rejuvenation injection because God bless him. He brought it out to Congress that this is what we should be doing.
Thank you, Carl. And for some additional background, Hubert Humphrey died on January 13th, 1978, and he was not particularly old at the time. He was 66. So that is a tragedy in and of itself because he could have survived for many more decades, and his death, unfortunately, occurred from cancer. He died of bladder cancer at the age of 66, and that shows that even someone as influential as Hubert Humphrey, as respected, with access to the best medical care of his time, he still could not overcome this dreadful disease. And that's quite unfortunate, as Benjamin Franklin also thought with regard to his own situation. He was unfortunately born too soon, but we need to remember his contributions to encouraging longevity research, especially at a time when these ideas were extremely novel, but perhaps there was more of a spirit of scientific optimism in the early 1960s as compared to today. So Hubert Humphrey could be bold and he could make a statement like, we should pursue the conquest of death and the reversibility of death. So thank you, Carl, for your commentary on Hubert Humphrey and his testimony. I would encourage everyone to find his remarks. And of course, we have also screen captured them here. So if you would like to read them later on, you would be able to go back to this recording and see the text. So next, I would like to talk to you about your musical endeavors and Johnny Forever. So Johnny Forever was you, essentially a rock musician. So tell us a bit more about what kinds of songs Johnny Forever would sing and what kinds of events he would hold and what the impact of those activities was.
Well, the idea of singing to young people about living forever or being young forever got very popular. And the idea was to sing songs that they could sing on their own as they walk down the street or go to a party. Youth Drug was one of my songs. I'm a youth drug, ooey baby, Johnny, Johnny, GH3. I could send you a list of the songs, but the basic idea was for young people to get involved through rock and roll music at the time. And at the same time, I was working with older people with the politics of life extension, but I was working with young people to stay young forever. And that is the very basic idea. And at the time, I was around 40 years old. So I was an older rock person. And they were amazed that I could jump around and sing songs like Youth Drug and be a living example for them in their life. So the point is that I truly believe that we need to be responsible as adults, but I wanted them to go to a party and have fun and sing Eternal Youth songs.
Yes, indeed.
And the thing is, it helped bring Timothy Leary over to us one time because he was there and he kind of dug what we were doing. Yes, there's me with my kill death sign. And the thing is, I just would go around doing concerts at different places to get youth involved. I want to be young forever was the concept. So, and it helped me, jumping around and singing and to feel young forever. But the thing is that in time, we got involved with the politics of it. And it's what we need to do. We need to go to politicians all over the country and alert them that there is a growing number of the population that want longevity as the solution to the world's problems.
Yes, indeed. And I'm going to share one more image of Johnny Forever here. Songs for the Biological Revolution, Johnny Forever, 1978 to 1984, retro rock and roll. So this gives us an idea of the time frame when Johnny Forever was active. I'm curious, Carl, are there any recordings of Johnny Forever songs that people can access online or purchase somewhere or download somewhere?
There have been. I haven't been active in doing it, but I'm going to get active in doing it again. Because again, youth needs to feel that they have a responsibility. It's not just partying and going crazy all the time, and finding a boyfriend or a girlfriend. It's about cosmic work that needs to be done. And we need to save the earth. So those are themes that are embedded into my rock and roll. I finished the rock and roll because I was working to write musicals. And like Bald and Boomers versus Boomer. And by the way, that one of the main influences at that time was FM Esfandiari. And the politics that he was talking about really appealed to me because he was saying no more left wing versus right wing, because we need to do as the transhumanists are doing, putting science, health, and technology at the forefront of American politics. And so the Transhumanist Party is evolving in that direction. And the thing is, it's now no longer left versus right. The Transhumanist Party are upwing, and the left and right fighting each other are downwing. So the upwingers are evolving a new kind of upwing politics to help human health become absolutely stunningly wonderful if you want to choose how long you live. And also to go into the stars. For example, one of the basic arguments I had when I first started doing this in the 60s was, and I was working in a science lab up in Berkeley, they would say, overpopulation. If everyone could live as long as they wish, the earth would become overpopulated. Well, the thing is that there are young geniuses now. I have a grandson who is so good with his cell phone. I'm thinking that their whole generation will be able to transform Mars and Venus and Mercury into habitable planets for Earthlings. So it answers the overpopulation problem. And by the way, births in Japan, China, and other countries are falling down. The population explosion is not happening anymore. So it would be very good for long-lived transhumanists to take the reign, because it's not an overpopulation problem. It's a moral and political and religious problem of saving the earth and making life much better and ending war and crime. So that's basically why I'm a supporter of the Transhumanist Party as the upwing party that we need to support.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Carl. And indeed, I have often stated, and many of our other Transhumanist Party members have stated, that the Transhumanist Party is upwing. So we are perpetuating the legacy of FM 2030, hopefully through the year 2030 and beyond. Now, I am also going to show another image that you created. This is a cartoon that you drew in 1974, and it shows some protesters picketing a funeral home. And this is interesting. Perhaps this is kind of a parallel universe in which the activists of slam developed into a group of people like this. And some of the posters say, "Why die? Science says you can live forever. Methuselah, live like him." And abolish deathism. Death is a disease. It can be cured. Let's smash deathism, immortality now. So, Carl, tell us more about this cartoon and what inspired you to draw it, and what reception did it get back 49 years ago in 1974?
Well, the thing is, when I was a kid, drawing cartoons became kind of a habit of mine because I had a kind of a sense of humor. And then I would always write little songs or sing them. I didn't write them down because I didn't know how to write the notes, but cartooning, songwriting, singing, I could even sing, a little bit in my childlike voice. Basically, as I became an immortalist, we did do a march like that, just exactly like that, at a funeral home when cryonic technology became popular. And we thought, oh, well, why bury people? Can funeral homes also give them a kind of a cryonic embalming? And so that's why we were trying to popularize the idea of cryonics and scientific life extension. And it was a lot of fun.
Yes, I can imagine, especially given this very lively scene that you drew, and hopefully a lot of viewers enjoyed it as well. But as everyone can see, we are bringing this cartoon back. So thank you, Carl, for that. Now I am going to share another item here. And this item pertains to a scientist, Dr. Hrachevek, Dr. Joseph Hrachevek, and it's written here that in the early 1980s, Dr. Hrachevek had a U.S. government grant to test the youth drug GH3 on his patients. If Johnny forever sang about GH3, it was because he was getting free GH3 shots from the good doctor who was happy that Johnny's song, "I'm a Youth Drug," advertised his experiments. So tell us more about Dr. Hrachevek, and also here are the lyrics of the youth drug song for anybody who is interested in perusing them. But what did Dr. Hrachevek work on, and what were the results of his experiments?
Well, he was getting patients and injecting them with GH3. And there was a great hope that GH3 had anti-aging aspects. He gave me the shots when I was doing my music. It really pumped me up to jump around and feel at the age of 39, 40, 41, young again. And that has lasted ever since I've become in my early 80s. He tried his best. He had the government grant, by the way. But the problem is that, for example, I contacted Dr. Robert Butler, who was the head of the National Institute of Aging, and brought him to Los Angeles to meet the mayor and get support for the work the NIA is doing. But the thing is, it couldn't get the kind of congressional push for anti-aging research just to make old people feel a little better, but it wasn't a push for anti-aging to make them young again. And so Dr. Hrachevek, his hard work didn't end up the way he wanted it to end up. And I feel that with a growing transhumanist movement, that support for the NIA is still going, but it doesn't have the huge, massive support because there isn't a great number of U.S. citizens demanding it to happen. But as we know, anti-aging is going to lead to longevity and saving the planet because longevity brings wisdom. So the thing is that the NIA can still be given a tremendous amount of support for all of the anti-aging and life extension research that's going on.
Yes, indeed. And the Transhumanist Party does support increased funding for the National Institutes of Health as part of its platform. Indeed, we recognize that this is one of the functions of government that doesn't harm anybody. It doesn't destroy lives. It tries to prolong lives. And so we have in our platform section 77, which reads, the United States Transhumanist Party supports increases in the budget for the National Institutes of Health, or NIH. Numerous biotech CEOs have recently made the case to increase the NIH budget because the NIH conducts research that their companies would not be able to invest in, as investments not leading directly to a product would affect the bottom line. 33% of all the publications from NIH research are cited in corporate patents, so it stimulates new product development. A major driver for economic progress and reducing the suffering of those in pain, the NIH is essentially a public charity that brings us into the future. Whether one supports limited or expansive government, the NIH does not seek to regulate anything, nor impose laws on anyone. It exclusively conducts medical research to help the sick. So I think this is very much aligned with what you were saying, Carl. And next, I would like to share another endeavor that you have been involved with, and this is Project 1989. Now, here is a visual, a handbook on anti-aging legislation, and the subtitle is Congress and the Research on Aging Act of 1974. So first, I would like to hear a bit from you about the Research on Aging Act of 1974, and then we can proceed to discuss Project 1989 and the relationship to fostering anti-aging research.
Well, yes, the thing is that Congress had passed the Research on Aging Act in 1974. So there was great hope that by, say, the late 80s or the early 90s of the previous century, there might be a great deal of scientific progress. Well, it didn't happen. It sort of limped along, but it was a law. Anti-aging legislation was blessed by Congress on the Researching Aging Act. Well, the thing is, to keep it going, I met a wonderful scientist, Dr. Benjamin Schloss in Los Angeles, who had worked on the atom bomb project in New Mexico. But seeing what had happened at Hiroshima and Nagasaki made him he told me when I met him, he had wanted to start Project 1989 to get some kind of serum involved for the public. Well, I worked with Dr. Schloss for about a year and found out that the radiation that he had received, it was very tragic, was ending his life. So on his deathbed, as I took care of him, he asked me to continue. So I went to Dr. Robert Butler and asked him to come out and meet the mayor. And I also worked with another gentleman to get legislation in Sacramento and Washington to support and create more money for anti-aging legislation for the NIA. It actually got the Human Genome Project started. It didn't happen in 1989 like Dr. Schloss wanted, but by the beginning of this century, the 21st century, there was a great deal of support for anti-aging research. However, we need to get this into the news, at daily news. You know, as I said before, what motivated me to get into immortalism was that the African-American population were fighting against racism, and the women were beginning to fight against sexism, and the gays were beginning to fight against cisgenderism. And I said, well, wait a minute. Why can't us mortals fight against mortalism? You know? And so that is basically what led me to get involved. And I'm still involved in wanting to fight against, I will use the term deathism because it's awful. We're against mortality. And I want to continue working with transhumanists because you are the basic spearhead for the movement. And again, here is Dr. Schloss. The discovery of aging cause may be near. I was able to get him publicity on this subject, hoping to get multimillionaires up in Beverly Hills to give him the money. But, the thing is, things have progressed in the last few decades to where now we have some billionaires putting money into it. But this was what our fight was to get it done back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But we were very glad when the Human Genome Project came out with the knowledge of what the DNA consists of.
Yes, thank you, Carl. And I'm curious with regard to Dr. Schloss, so that we know a bit more of the timeline. When was this article by you written, and when did Dr. Schloss die? And you said he died of some radiation that was used in his experiments. What was he using the radiation for? What was he trying to achieve?
Well, no, he was working on the nuclear project, helping build the first atomic bomb in New Mexico.
So the essentially delayed impact of radiation exposure killed him.
That's what he told me. Yes, exactly.
Yes,
as he was lying on his deathbed. I was helping him when he was on his deathbed, bringing him food and water and stuff like that. But that's what he said, that basically the radiation that he had received years before had begun to give him cancer and kill him. And he asked me to continue the work, which I did, getting in contact with Dr. Butler and getting politicians involved. And again, this is the upwing motive behind transhumanism, is to get politics involved in consciousness of the need to save our planet through longevity and our future evolution into the cosmos. And you're doing a great job. And I'm totally behind you, because you're continuing what Dr. Schloss and the Human Genome Project have led us to. And that is like scientific longevity and ultimately scientific immortality.
Yes, well, thank you very much. I'm honored by your good words. And I will point out also that right now, one of the foundations that is leading the charge in the work that you describe as the LEV Foundation. LEV stands for Longevity Escape Velocity, that is led by Dr. Aubrey de Grey, one of the leading biogerontologists of our day. And I'm very proud to be a member of the board of directors of the LEV Foundation. So I'm excited to see what kinds of research, what kinds of breakthroughs will come from the work of this very courageous and ambitious group.
I met Aubrey de Grey many years ago and told him that, we've got to keep fighting to make it real. And also, I don't know if you've ever heard of the name Alan Harrington, but he wrote a very important book called The Immortalist. I tried to keep in contact with people who were working on the same project. Aubrey was one of them, Alan Harrington another, and many others yes, exactly, Aubrey. Yes, that's him. And the thing is, I'm glad that he's still going and hasn't given up. I haven't given up. You haven't given up, because we need to get this done and become part of mass consciousness. I mean, every day, African-American politics is embedded in the mass media. People are saying, we've got to support Black people against this racist nonsense. And women, are getting tremendous support because if some guy does something, it's sexism, and we have to stop that. And gays are trying to get support for gay marriage as against cisgenderist attempts to stop them from getting married. So immortalism and transhumanism are fighting against mortalism or deathism, so that longevity can save the earth and send us, our species, into the universe to evolve a much higher level than we are now. That's it.
Yes, thank you very much, Carl. And I will also show another image from Death is Wrong. this is Alan Harrington here.
Yeah.
And there's a quotation from him in the book. "We must never forget that we are cosmic revolutionaries, not stooges conscripted to advance a natural order that kills everybody." So this is one of the great illustrations in the book. And I
Yes.
will also show the illustration of Aubrey once again so that people can know here he is within
Mhm.
this ornate frame. My plan is to create an updated edition of Death is Wrong in 2023 with many more illustrations and a greatly expanded narrative. I'm actually hoping to have a picture of Hubert Humphrey in there, along with a quotation from his 1962 testimony. This is one of the benefits of the information that we have exchanged, Carl, because I want to put as many of the great historical figures who contributed to raising awareness of the prospect of indefinite life extension as possible into the book. So thank you for that. And the next image that I would like to show pertains to Project 1989. And here it is. So this image reads Project 1989, the conquest of degenerative disease and aging in our time. And this is quite remarkable because in 1989, I was 2 years old. And had Project 1989 achieved the conquest of degenerative disease and aging in our time, then essentially by now, I think we would have had indefinite life extension. But still, it's remarkable that this effort was launched, and it also seems to have been quite ambitious. There's an individual pictured here, Ronald Bennett, PhD, who was the executive director of Project 1989. Could you tell us a bit more about him, Carl, and what his work focused on, what his ideas were, what he was able to do?
Well, we introduced Project 1989 to him, and he got very excited about it because he was in Beverly Hills doing his own work. Through him, we were able to meet politicians like the mayor, Mayor Bradley, and he kept going as long as he could. But then he ran into some personal problems that made him drop it, unfortunately. But he went very strong with me because I was his aide in advertising the idea. But he ran into some personal problems that really hurt him, so he had to drop out. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, the whole idea extended with the Human Genome Project, and now we know all about the DNA that we can begin to manipulate. And if Dr. Bennett was still with us alive, he would be smiling and very happy.
Yes, thank you for that, Carl. Now, when did Dr. Bennett die, just so that we can establish some of the chronology here?
Well, I don't really know because there were various reports to me because I was involved in another project and I wasn't in Los Angeles anymore. I was in the Bay Area organizing marches. So I heard one date would be like 2004, and another was 2003. So I'll do some research into it because he was a good guy trying to carry on the work that Dr. Schloss had started.
Yes. So Benjamin Schloss and Ronald Bennett are two important figures from the history of the life extension movement that I think more needs to be written on, more needs to be documented about so that we have their ideas and their legacies as part of our awareness, and we can take the best of their thinking and move forward with it. So yes. Thank you for that, Carl.
Absolutely.
Yes. And the next image that I would like to share is an image that includes you and Mayor Bradley of Los Angeles, and this is part of Project 1989. So, Carl, you are on the right here holding the Project 1989 document. So tell us more about the people in this image and how this meeting came to be and what was accomplished in this meeting.
Oh, I'd love to, because the lady here in the middle was Lisa Jonti, and she got me connected to the mayor because she was very much into immortalism and anti-aging. Next to her, on her right, of course, is the head of the NIA, Dr. Butler. And then next to him is Dr. Bennett. And of course, over here, between me and Lisa Jonti, is the wonderful mayor of Los Angeles, Tom Bradley, who was very much enthusiastic about anti-aging and life extension. And that was the beginning of our hope that we could get a political movement going. And we almost did with several other mayors that he contacted. And we even contacted Sacramento politicians who were willing to support this. How it all kind of went away, I don't know. But at least we had the Human Genome Project identifying the DNA. And we need to start a new movement with the transhumanists to get it going the way it should have kept going at that time.
Yes, thank you, Carl. And Tom Bradley, Mayor Tom Bradley of Los Angeles, is another forward-thinking politician,
yes,
remarkably advanced in terms of his outlook for his time, but for our time as well. Just like Hubert Humphrey would have been great to bring back in our time to give his speech, maybe with a few updates like we need to compete with the Chinese government, or we need to compete with Putin's Russia to achieve the conquest of death. That would be amazing if a politician were to give a speech like that today. But I'm going to share now another article about Project 1989. And this is an article that was written in May 1979. And this is the Project 1989 Anti-Aging newsletter from the Committee for Anti-Aging Research. And here we see a picture of Mayor Bradley signing the anti-aging petition for Dr. Ronald Bennett, whom we discussed previously. And here the article begins. Dr. Ronald Bennett, chairman of the Committee on Anti-Aging Research, and Mayor Tom Bradley of Los Angeles met with a group of senior citizens gathered at Harbor Towers in San Pedro, California. Mayor Bradley addressed the group on the subject of anti-aging research and gave his support to the Research on Anti-Aging Act of 1974, unanimously passed by the 93rd Congress. Dr. Bennett, the Committee for Anti-Aging Research chairman, presented Mayor Bradley with an anti-aging research petition, which he signed, giving his full support to the National Institute of Aging, NIA, as a major step in launching a national campaign to appropriate millions in additional congressional funds for research on the causes of aging. Public support is absolutely essential by way of a national drive to circulate the anti-aging research petition in order to gain congressional support to increase funds for the National Institute of Aging to accelerate this vital research. So this is the article, and I'm curious to find out more about this anti-aging research petition and what it consisted of, how it was received, what the impact was.
Well, it basically approached people and saying, you know, would you support research that reverses aging so that older people can live longer lives, happier lives, and young people won't have to have their skin dry up like a prune, because older people basically don't have their ability, their body doesn't have the ability to rejuvenate their cells of their body. Therefore, young people, I even made pictures of young people growing old and showing them what they were going to look like when they had dried up old age skin. So the thing is that in talking to people about this, I never stopped to include the idea that a young population, long-lived population, would be able to save the earth. Because I was tired of hearing, oh, you want to be young forever, so you're so selfish. No, this is part of a greater project to save our planet, because long-lived people, even in young bodies, rejuvenated bodies, are going to be interested in keeping the earth in a good state, not suffer from global warming or other tragic problems like that. So basically, that was the idea, to get young people involved as well as older people, because having dried up skin wasn't pleasant for a woman who was very attractive when she was young, and then not attractive as she was old, even though her husband would love her no matter what she looked like.
Yes, thank you, Carl. And there's another aspect of this newsletter that is quite intriguing. So this is a headline: Project 1989 launches statewide anti-aging drive. It begins with the following: the Republican caucus in Sacramento is working in conjunction with the Committee for Anti-Aging Research to introduce a bill for a statewide anti-aging crash program, the California Anti-Aging Research Project 1989. 2 states, Ohio and New York, have anti-aging legislation either as law or pending legislative approval. The California bill, Project 1989, will be more comprehensive in scope and purpose. California has the largest senior population in the U.S., and within 50 years, senior citizens will comprise 17% of the total population and 40% of the federal budget. I think this has already happened.
Yeah.
With an ever-increasing group of elderly supported by a shrinking base of young active wage earners, there's only one solution: keep the elderly as productive members of society by keeping them healthy, fit, young, and free of degenerative diseases through the coordinated efforts of the California Anti-Aging Research Project 1989. So this is very interesting as an example of state-level activism, and this speaks of an attempt to implement an aging research project, anti-aging research project in California, but also it mentioned 2 other states, Ohio and New York, that had anti-aging legislation at various stages of advancement. So could you tell us more about those statewide efforts? What happened with the California Anti-Aging Research Project 1989?
Well, it kept going. We kept bugging them, the politicians, to support anti-aging. But at the same time, there was opposition. Like, oh no, we're mortal. We're going to age and die and what have you. We couldn't get enough public support. I was always trying to organize marches to get into the news, to make it a continual subject as part of our culture. And it still needs to be done. The point is that it just has to be created again in a new way. I thought that things were going well. I thought the politics were going well to get aging people some support for anti-aging. And I went into the youth movement as Johnny Forever to get the kids involved. So I didn't stick with what I thought they were carrying on and doing very well, because I felt we had already accomplished getting the anti-aging thing going. See, but as you know, there's always opposition. And how to get it started again? I think transhumanism, if you could possibly send a few people out with picket signs to support a laboratory doing the anti-aging research, it would get in the news. We have to get it in the news. And if I had stuck with the project instead of trying to help the kids sing Immortalist Rock and Roll, I think it would have been done, because I was doing all of the advertising and connections for Dr. Bennett and Dr. Schloss. So it partly, I thought it was going well. And I went off to be help the youth movement become an eternal youth movement. and it still needs to be done. Black people have made African American rights popular in the news daily. Women, if a guy does something wrong against a woman, she's a sexism, and you see it in the news. And if somebody hurts the gays and won't let them get married, it's in the news. But where is anti-aging going to be in the news? It should be in the news every day. Life extension, anti-aging, and even scientific immortality. Those are the three basic foundations for the movement. Anti-aging is the most popular because nobody wants to grow old and dried up. And then life extension is for some people to really enjoy being young, even when they're 200 years old. And a few people, a larger percentage, would love to become scientific immortals and travel the universe to help other developing species, evolve to a higher level. So this didn't go very well the way we thought it would. Transhumanism is carrying the banner now to make it happen in the 21st century.
I would certainly hope that we can make it happen in the 21st century within all of our lifetimes. And the kind of future you describe is a future that I personally would gladly embrace. Now, one other image that I'm going to show here is an image of the petition itself, the anti-aging research petition. Mm-hmm. Here it is. This is what it looked like. Yeah. And to give our viewers an idea of what the petition was about, this was sponsored by the Committee for Anti-Aging Research, and it describes a United States Congressional Act, Public Law 93-296, passed on May 31st, 1974 as the Research on Aging Act, provides nearly $40 million of public funds for research into the causes and possible cure for the aging process. We, the undersigned, support the Research on Aging Act and urge Congress to appropriate millions more for research on the biology of aging. So very reasonable petition, I would say, and a petition that had a high likelihood of attracting support during that era, during the 1970s. I think it would still do very well today if phrased similarly, but applicable to more contemporary legislation. Mm-hmm. So this is a model for a petition that could be circulated. And as you can see, it has all of the elements of a petition here. And I'm curious, Carl, how many signatures did it receive? Do you recall?
We got about 200 signatures in the few months that we were circulating it, and that what made it very popular to politicians. They thought, "Oh my God, 200 people would want to support anti-aging research." But again, I worked with Dr. Bennett and the others, and then I went off to become Johnny Forever. Darn it.
Yeah, so your regret is that you didn't stick with the political aspect of the movement longer, because there are always people who are needed to push these endeavors that they don't achieve themselves.
Yes, of contacting congressmen. We would get one or two congress people, or in Sacramento, the politicians would get very excited about it. But others would be grumpy and what have you, if we had, the thing was, if we had movie stars who suddenly looked like they were 30 years younger, that would have gotten people going. And the politicians would say, hey, yeah, but it wasn't happening, darn it. And I was running off to get the kids rock and rolling to the Johnny Forever song. So I should have stayed with it and gotten a few movie stars to look like they were 30 years younger.
Yes, that would have definitely been an achievement that would have been impossible for the public to overlook. More recently, one of my good friends, Dr. Bill Andrews of Sierra Sciences, had been saying that if he could make Betty White appear on stage looking like she's 25, then of course the public would recognize that aging had been reversed. But unfortunately, Betty White did not make it to such a fortunate conclusion, she died at the age of 99, so she lived
Yeah.
longer than the vast majority of human beings, but unfortunately, Bill Andrews was not able to persuade her to participate in trials to help reverse her aging. So that is another loss to humanity. Now, I also wanted to ask you a bit about your books before we go to our question and answer session. So, you have written the Cosmic Mutant trilogy, and I am going to share the first book cover from the trilogy, the report on the Cosmic Mutant, A Tale of Immortals Fighting for Their Lives by Lang Ramden, intergalactic reporter, as told to Carl Span. So tell us more about this trilogy. There's no need to offer any spoilers, but what are some of the general themes? What is the setting of the Cosmic Mutant trilogy, and where can people find it?
Well, it's online. They can go to Amazon and they can find it online, all three books. But the basic idea is that science had created immortals, not only just as organic beings, but as techno-sapiens. And the thing is that they're spreading their word all over the universe, but there is a species that does not want that to happen. And so the immortals have to be fighting for their lives against the Nihili species who want to destroy the universe and bring it down to zero. See, so the thing is, it's a fight between potential energy and kinetic energy. All life is based on kinetic energy, but the Nihili species want everything to reduce down to nothingness, and they worship a god called Zero. And so that if they can destroy all life in all universes, they are doing the work for Zero to eliminate all kinetic energy. Well, the thing is, life extension and physical immortality are all extensions of kinetic energy. And they basically, on the report of the Cosmic Mutant, is that a young genius, a young, brilliant genius, has discovered many, many different ways to go back in time and go forward in time to fight against the Nihili. And they want to grab him and they want to kill him and take his brain so that they can computerize his brain and find out ways to fight the life-giving, immortal-giving life that he is trying to bring into the universe. So it's about an 8-year-old genius, and he's an amazing kid, but he's always under attack because they're trying to find him and to steal all of his ideas so they can use it for their own negative purpose, for their worship of the god Zero.
Yes.
But actually, on the other hand, there is a god and a goddess who are trying to fight against Zero. So they're on the side of the little mutant. That's the basic plot.
That is quite a fascinating story here. And I would say the Nihili, as you describe them, of course, their name is of the same origin as nihilism, and nihil is nothing. So they are essentially the perfect villains, the advocates of nothingness, who will stop at nothing to achieve nothing. And the protagonists of the book have to confront them and overcome them. So everyone, please check out the Cosmic Mutant trilogy by Lang Ramden, as told to Carl Span. So you can find it on Amazon. You can also find it on booklocker.com. You can find all three books of the Cosmic Mutant trilogy there. So now we are going to head into the question and answer portion of our Virtual Enlightenment Salon today. And I'm going to ask for Art Ramon Garcia and Ben Ballweg to pose any questions that they wish or make any comments that they wish. Who would like to begin? Art Ramon, please proceed.
Yeah, when you expect opposition, like when you're trying to get a petition done, I think reframing things and rewording things, rather than, anti-aging research, you do anti-progeria research, which is that genetic condition that kids get where they they age accelerated symptoms. So they look, they're like 10 years old, but they look like they're 90. So that would be one way to overcome opposition, is to just sort of reframe the wording. And as far as like trying to get private sector funding for anti-aging, I mean, the cosmetics industry, I mean, they're in the business of beauty, and they really should pivot more. I hear that some of them are pivoting, but they're the ones who really should be pivoting more, because that's their financial survival, to get into anti-aging research, because that's real beauty there, versus just makeup, the people, the solutions now, say like plastic surgery. I mean, some of the results of plastic surgery and people, using that to look youthful. Some of them look like cat people. The results aren't that good. So you could get sort of, that's one way to market it, is any magazine that advertises like cosmetic surgery, is to get those anti-aging ads in there. And that would be a way to just get more, more eyes on anti-aging. But a question I had is, back in the 70s when you first got started, I mean, in science fiction, a lot of ideas start in science fiction. Were there any movies back in when you were growing up, like in the 50s, 60s, that kind of touched on immortalism?
Yes. So, Carl, what influences from science fiction or books, movies, any kinds of media did you have growing up that addressed the possibility of radical life extension or immortality? Can you think of any?
Any influences? Not really. The idea came to me separate from movies, although I hope in the future there are movies about this subject all the time. But no Hollywood movie ever stimulated my interest in life extension or immortality. No, not really.
Very interesting. So when you were younger, particularly in your pre-college days before you got involved with SLAM, what were some of your original motivations for considering mortality to be undesirable, for considering death to be an enemy to be fought? Because I've written about my own origin story in Death is Wrong, and how as a very young child, I was asking questions about what happens next and what happens after that and what happens after that. And eventually I was told, well, then people die and death is just the cessation of existence. And I could never accept that. I found that to be a profound injustice, punishment of the innocent who have not done anything to deserve it. So I'm curious, at what stage in your life and based on what influences did you come to the conclusion that death needed to be fought?
Well, the thing is, as I said, I never had grandparents because they all died before I was born. And then my uncles, my father's brothers, were dying. So really, my initial approach to it was that we are basically very much like bubbles that pop. And the thing is, there's no way for a bubble to fight against itself being popped. So as a teenager, I wrote a story about a bubble that didn't want to pop. And so Bobby Bubble is always fighting to stay in his bubble existence and get other bubbles also not wanting to pop. And of course, there's opposition because many bubbles believe that they must pop and so forth and so forth. So that's kind of where it started. from my not having grandparents like the other kids into also writing stories when I was a kid. I wrote songs, I wrote stories, I was able to draw cartoons and do all this stuff. But I was saying, what am I going to do with all this? And then it suddenly occurred to me, oh, that would be so good if bubbles didn't pop. And then eventually I began hearing about anti-death ideas. And by the time I was 21, I ran into the idea of slam. See, so it all started with Bobby Bubble.
Bobby Bubble, that's fascinating. Do you still have a copy of that short story?
Yeah, I'll try to find it and send it over to you. Because
Yes.
Bobby wanted to live forever. He wanted to be a bubble forever. See?
That would be wonderful. And I think it would also be wonderful to be able to publish that short story online, because that is a prime example of early immortalist thinking. And I think it would be a fascinating memorialization of the history of our movement, as well as giving people an understanding of the universality of this aspiration to conquer death, because it's not unique to our specific era or my generation of transhumanists or the generation of transhumanists before mine. I think this aspiration is present in people of every generation, and some people articulate it through their writing, through their art, through music, as you have done. And we need to preserve as much of that as possible and carry it forward and learn from it and utilize it and hope that it inspires more people. So some of your work early on in your life, hopefully, is going to galvanize more people today, including young people, to join our movement and help bring about the reversal of biological aging and the defeat of death. So thank you for that, Carl. And now I would like to ask Ben Ballweg if he has any questions or comments.
Thanks for being here, Carl. I have two questions. You can choose either one or both. Well, first, I wanted to say that Gennady knows me pretty well by now, because he asked your origin story question. That one's always curious to me, too. I'm kind of getting the impression that you seem like you were pretty comfortable, like, sharing your beliefs in death being wrong from a very early age, and I applaud you for that. So I'll skip those two questions. One question I have, you did mention that you have a wife, and I was curious how you guys align on your beliefs in death being a thing to be overcome. The second question I had was, you had a lot of optimism back in the early 60s when the science was just kind of starting to come around, and now the science really is coming, but you've been around a bit. So I wonder if you're more optimistic now than you were back when you were kind of getting excited about this. So those two questions, let me know if I can rephrase them or anything.
If you could rephrase the first question, I'm curious. I would love to answer.
How you met your wife and how you guys are aligned in your search for avoiding death.
Oh, that's a good question, because it's very interesting the way I met her. She's Chinese. She's now an American and very much pro-America. But the thing is that I've learned that the Chinese basically are immortalists. They really would love to have an eternal youth serum. So I was in my 40s when I met her after my rock and roll years. And I had been told by a lovely woman, a newspaper lady from Australia. She came to me and she said, "I'm going to tell you what your basic good luck, where to go." I said, "Sure, go ahead, tell me." So she got some information from me and came back a few days later and said, "Oh, your good luck is in China." I said, "Really? Well, I'm never going to go to China." Well, not more than 2 months later, I met my wife and fell in love with her immediately. And I've been to China 9 or 10 times over the last 40 years. And the thing is, the Chinese basically are very much into living a long time and being young and healthy. So that's how that started. I can even speak a little bit of Chinese. Ni hao means hello.
I was just curious to follow up on this. When you visited China, what kinds of commentary did you encounter about longevity from the Chinese? And did you observe any sorts of organizations or efforts toward the reversal of aging?
I wish I had been looking around for it, because my wife's parents lived until their 90s, and they wanted to live longer, very much in terms of the Chinese belief in longevity. But I asked around, and I didn't see anything related to anti-aging research back in the 80s and 90s. If I had, I would be able to tell you what's going on. And there must be something going on, because in China, they believe in longevity. But, I kept looking around. I couldn't find anything, anybody to talk to and learn from that would make it a much brighter picture of a life in China.
Yes, it would be excellent if we could find out more about the current state of thinking in China with regard to longevity, because this is a part of the world whose internet is the most isolated from our own.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, they may have a lot of internal activity that we just don't know about, because we can't readily access it. But it would be great to build some of those bridges. I know the political situation in both China and the United States makes that difficult. However, the cause of longevity should overcome all political divisions. And it would be excellent to have some Chinese allies in those endeavors. Now, Ben, I think it would be good if you posed your second question to Carl again, and then he could respond.
Thanks, Ben.
Sure. So you felt a lot of optimism back like in the early 60s, but the science wasn't near as far along as it is now. However, you are further along in your age now. So I'm curious if you were more optimistic then than you are now, or how do you relate that time in your life to this time in your life?
That's a good question. Thank you, Ben. The thing is, I was just very enthusiastic about the idea and trying to find out if there were any people going to do anti-aging research or longevity research. But now it's going on. I was reading on the internet that scientists in Germany are trying to reanimate dead people. Not as zombies, but to bring them back to life. It's much more advanced now than it was back then, because now we're able to talk about it without people saying you're crazy. See, because the science is getting more and more and more advanced, but the thing we need is greater mass consciousness, the beginning of a mass culture. Like when I was in my 20s, the hippie culture began. And I saw how this completely undermined middle-class values, but it grew and grew and grew and grew. And it's amazing. Well, I think the same thing can happen to transhumanist and immortalist culture, growing and growing and growing as the science is beginning to advance much, much further than it was in the 60s. Well, I was very happy in the 60s to talk about immortalism and run around and organize marches against funeral homes so that they could begin to freeze people instead of bury them. But the thing was that the science, you're right, the science wasn't there, but it's now advancing. And I'm in my 80s. I'm 82 years old. I'll be 83 in a couple of months. I'm very enthusiastic that transhumanism can create the culture as the science and help the science advance. Because if there are millions of people happy about anti-aging research and marching to scientific laboratories saying, hey, we're very happy with you guys doing that kind of work because we're going to be young for at least a couple of 100 years, that would be great. And I think that's going to happen. Again, I'm still writing songs about being young forever.
Excellent. And I think we and the public in general would benefit from hearing those songs. So any recordings that you have to offer, I think would be great to spread.
Oh, okay.
There would be enthusiastic reception within our movement for any art and music that highlights longevity and the prospect for reversal of biological aging. Now, it's interesting that you mentioned that right now there are fewer people who will just think that one is crazy for discussing these kinds of aspirations. So you do believe that the current cultural environment, for all of its problems, is still more receptive to the fight against aging and death than, say, the 1960s or 1970s cultural environments were.
Oh, absolutely. Sure. Because the science is advancing. And of course, there's going to be some crazy opponents, that might be even a little bit of danger, is that you want to live forever? Oh, yeah, I'm going to make sure, that kind of thinking. But I think that's just a minority. I believe that the majority of people, now that the baby boomers are growing older, they would, and they were all into youth movement. I think they could be brought into an eternal youth movement. And that would, for example, one song I wrote was, we're marching for immortality, scientific immortality, marching for immortality, a life extension is our goal. See, that kind of thing.
Yes. I would love to hear a full-fledged musical recording of that song, maybe even with an accompanying music video. I think it would be great. It has a catchy melody. It could be orchestrated in a variety of ways. I'm a composer, by the way. So yes, I compose in my spare time. So listeners to our prior virtual enlightenment salons will recall our concert of futuristic neoclassical music that was aired on December 25th, 2022. Those were my compositions, remastered by our friend Jason Geringer, our legislative director, who unfortunately could not make it to this recording session. But I would encourage everyone to check out that virtual concert and his work. And hopefully we could, in the future, hold a virtual concert of Carlyle's music, some of the Immortalist songs, maybe some of the Johnny Forever songs. I think that would attract a lot of attention and admiration from our community. So I would encourage for that to happen. I have another question for you, Carl, and that is with regard to the SLAM days. One of the co-founders of SLAM was Dr. Ted Goertzel, who is a famous scholar in his own right. He has written a lot about conspiracy theories, for instance, and why they form and the mindsets of people who adhere to them. But he's also known as the father of Dr. Ben Goertzel, who is one of the leading AI researchers of our time and a famous transhumanist. So did you interact with Ted Goertzel? And if you did, what was he like as an early 20-something-year-old?
Well, the thing was, I was at UCLA at that time, and I think SLAM was in Ohio. So I was learning about it long distance. And the thing is, there were, I forget what his name, but there was a SLAM advocate. I have it written down somewhere. I'll send it over to you. And I was, we were both fighting to get recognition for SLAM at UCLA. But at that time, it was just a wild idea that we would abolish mortality. But the thing was, I wasn't in contact with Ted, I don't think. at that time. I was just writing letters to him and communicating that way because we didn't, unfortunately, have the internet.
I'm going to see if I can get Ted Goertzel as a guest on a future Virtual Enlightenment Salon, and Ben Goertzel as well. And perhaps if that happens, you could join us, and you and he might have a conversation after all of these years.
Oh, yeah. God, yes. Say after
that
60 years, yeah. Oh, no, you're doing wonderful work keeping, getting a whole organization or culture together. And your futuristic classical music is great. I really enjoy it. And
Yes.
Keep doing it. Keep writing more.
Thank you, and I shall. That is definitely my aspiration, to compose more music. Now, I also would encourage our listeners to create life extension themed, immortality themed art, music, writing, poetry, short stories, nonfiction, whatever you think can help raise public awareness and inspire more contributions to our movement.
Yes, thank you. I even wrote one short story called Hitler in Rehab, and it was about whether we should execute him because he was captured in South America and is now 100 years old in a wheelchair. And should we allow him to live after all the bad things that he did? Thankfully, he dies of a heart attack at the age of 100, so that he doesn't have to be executed. But I know what you're talking about. I'll look through my stories and see if I can get something that you just suggested.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, we have the Transhumanist Party website. We can publish any content along these lines, like short stories, in order to spread them to a broader audience.
Good.
And now we are coming to a close for our Virtual Enlightenment Salon, but I would like to give the opportunity first for our panelists to make some closing comments, and then for you, Carl, to give us the last word for today's discussion. Art Ramon, let's start with closing comments from you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show, Carl. I wasn't aware there was so much interest in anti-aging in the 70s. I find it a little shocking. It's very interesting to learn this. So, but thank you for coming on the show.
Yes, absolutely. And we are going to do more segments about the history of life extension and transhumanism, because there is a lot that is not yet widely known, but it is part of the sequence of events that led our movement to become what it is. And so I'm very pleased that we were able to have this kind of extensive session to delve into that time period in our movement's past. Ben, please go ahead.
Thanks for sharing about that 1974 creation of the NIA. I had forgotten that was that year. I hope you've heard of the Advanced Research Project Agency for Health that just came out last year and is kind of getting going. But there happens to be a petition going around right now to get that organization to focus on aging. So do check that out, Carl. It's kind of neat, kind of like this generation's maybe excitement for science to make us healthier longer.
Good.
Yes. So ARPA-H, which Ben mentioned, does indeed show some promise. Of course, we wanted to be ambitious, and we wanted to sponsor research that may not always be the most, let's say, incremental or sure to produce short-term results, because there's already a lot of that in terms of government grants, but they tend to lead to very modest consequences.
Mm-hmm.
We would like ARPA-H to fund some research that really could have an immense payoff if it succeeds, but also it might not have a 100% or even say 60% probability of success. Some of these research projects might have a 10% probability of success, but if they succeed, they will transform healthcare and the prospects for us to live dramatically longer.
Mhm.
So, Carl, I'm going to leave the last word to you. As part of that, I would be curious to hear about what you are planning to do to extend your longevity in the coming years, because as you mentioned, you're 82 years old, and a lot of the radical scientific breakthroughs that could extend lifespans are likely going to come when you are in your 90s. So what are you doing personally to make sure that you stay alive until then?
Well, number one, I quit smoking 20, 30 years ago. I quit drinking booze because it undermines one's liver. And I don't even drink coffee, mainly because I have a condition in my ear called tinnitus, and caffeine makes the noise louder and louder. So I got off of smoking and also the other stuff because I wanted to at least be alive in my 90s. If ever it came, the day came that longevity was a reality. And the thing is, people kept telling me, oh, living 1,000 years, that's just for ancient people. I said, yeah, when the science can rejuvenate the cells of your body, you're going to be a young ancient. See? So my whole thing is to come up with ideas to counter the mortal consciousness. Yes, in my novel, there are guys or people, women who live, for example, one rotation of the galaxy is 250,000 years. So a galactic year is 250,000 Earth years. So I had just kept telling myself, I want to live a galactic year. So be healthy and keep going, because maybe the discovery of anti-aging will happen in the next, what is it now, 17 years.
Yes, and indeed, Dr. Aubrey de Grey has stated that in his view, there's about a 50% probability of reaching longevity escape velocity within the next 15 years. So
Yes.
We wish you all the best, Carl, and we hope that you are going to be one of the beneficiaries of these advances. And in the meantime, you've given excellent advice not to smoke, not to drink alcohol. I follow that advice personally. I have never smoked, and it has been 31 years since I've consumed alcohol, so I've been sober for 31 years. Now, those of you who have watched through the entire Virtual Enlightenment Salon can do the math to determine when I had my last alcoholic drink. But on that note, I am going to say thank you to Carl, thank you to Ben and Art Ramon for participating in our session today. Thank you to all of our viewers, and I hope that you all live long and prosper.
There we go.